reason that I'm here is because the club is seeking change.
He said, well, whether you come or not, you're going to see a completely different Spurs team under me.
My hope and my desire and what I'm going to try and do is give our supporters hope and belief that we're going to embark on something special.
Welcome into the Tottenham Depot. I am your host, Andrew. You can follow me at Stedka. You can follow us at Tottenham Depot. This is episode 215. The magic of the FA Cup is here, and Spurs are perhaps sheepishly into the fourth round of the FA Cup. We've got Todd alongside to talk about this one today. He is at TC_Show. TC, what is up, my man?
I don't know what you're talking about, brother. Any day you can chat with your mates about a cracking 3-0 victory and Tony Kinski's second clean sheet in a row is a good fucking day.
Well, I was just going for the lamb pun, my friend. That's all. I was just trying to throw a little pun action in there for the listeners to giggle at as they embark on this episode. Caroline is also here at CG Stefko. Caroline, I know you got my pun. I know you got it.
I'll be honest, I totally just spaced out there for a second, but sure, yeah. We're here for the puns. We know what the people need. So
I was going to come into this with all kinds of lamb and sheep puns, but I think that might be the only one I come up with on the fly. We'll just kind of leave it at that. But yes, Spurs, a 3-0 victor over Tamworth after extra time. This game was, of course, goalless at 90 minutes. A little bit of a struggle for Spurs against this non-league side. We're going to get into that. We're going to get into Spurs Women not being able to start their season, their 2025 campaign because of a frozen pitch. Just the more magic of the FA Cup. A lot more to talk about on today's episode. If you missed it, we did talk about the Liverpool match in a midweek pod this past week. The Liverpool Carabao Cup first leg. Go back in your feed if you missed it. A full pod that we did midweek on that game. So we're going to leave that one kind of where it is. But Todd, I think that it is worth mentioning that I think we expected to see a rotated side for this game against Tamworth today and didn't really see it, which is kind of interesting because this was a what some might say a slightly stronger side than we would have expected, right?
I think this boils down to availability, right? And the fact that we've got 11 first-team players that are out injured, it has a lot to do with this. So, we saw the guys rotated back in that missed it midweek and popping matters. And we saw Timo get the start up front, which we'll come on to, I'm sure. And, we saw a bit of rotation, but it's like if you were looking to see us rotate at the back, the cupboard's fucking bare, my friend. So I wasn't surprised too much when I saw this side come out. It's not what I wanted, but it's what I understand that we have to offer.
No, it's very true. Caroline, were you surprised at all by this show of strength, I guess you could say? I mean, quite a few senior players. We did see the return of Mikey Moore from his long bout with an illness, which we will also come on to. So that was maybe like the one really good piece of youth that Postecoglou was able to get into this lineup. But for the most part, I mean, this, like Todd said, the cupboards are kind of bare, and Ange threw out what he had to throw out there.
Yeah, I mean, I think there were maybe a couple of changes he could have made. Like, I was a little surprised to not see Lucas get another start. But overall, I mean, it really is just kind of the availability, and also the fact that I think Ange was prioritizing resting some of the players that he least wanted to see on that dodgy pitch, that being Sonny and Decky and Solanke. So it makes sense from that perspective. And I also think that maybe Ange has finally joined us on the cup train and is legitimately prioritizing the cups.
Big cup guy.
As we know, the league is a little out of hand at the moment. So I think he really is taking it seriously. And this was his attempt to, wrap the game up early. Obviously that did not happen, but I see the intent.
I know that a lot of people are going to come out of having watched this game and it being kind of a slog and an artificial pitch, and you're having to go to a much smaller ground, and all the kind of trappings of an FA Cup set were potentially there. But it's not worth it to me to get worked up over this performance from Spurs. I know that sounds dismissive and some people may be a little bit more upset, but TC, this for me was like, this is kind of what the FA Cup is. You've got to be able to grind these types of results out. And I get that in a previous life, in a previous iteration of this event, this tournament, you know, Tamworth would have been rewarded with a replay at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium here in a few weeks. And instead it goes extra time and could have even gone to penalties, as we saw with the Manchester United Arsenal match that we all sat around and watched. Like, I think that kind of is what this tournament is now, and it's that it's over with, and it's nice that there's not a whole nother 90 minutes that needs to be played. But I can't get really worked up about it. Spurs did what they kind of had to do in this position, right?
Well, it's the third round of the FA Cup, and you're absolutely right. If we make it to a semifinal, nobody's going to look back on that dodgy 90 minutes at fucking Tamworth. No one cares. And so, without the AET next to the scoreline, this just looks like a second clean sheet in the row for Tony Kinski to me.
Caroline, you got similar feelings on that? Like, this to me is just like, it's a nature of the way that this tournament is built out. And like I said, Spurs, I don't think you can expect Spurs to go and into this environment on a dodgy frozen artificial pitch against guys who this is their second job, not their first job. And you've got to be careful in a situation like this. And I think Spurs to an extent were careful and still got the job done.
Yeah, I mean, you absolutely have to be careful. And I think there was that element of sort of preservation happening with the tactics and also with the team selection that we already talked about. But you had also sent us a link to an interview Ange did after the game where he was asked about the fact that it doesn't go to a replay anymore. And, does that kind of go against Ange's recent comments about preserving tradition in the game? And, I appreciated his answer, which was basically, and traditions are important, but we also have to recognize that teams like Tottenham, who are in European competition, who go deep into the cups, there are simply too many games. Like, there just are. There's no time to fit them into the calendar in a way that's like fair to player health, at this stage of the season. So I totally agree with him. And I think, we did see a little bit of that on the pitch. Like, the players are tired. Porro looked pretty horrid today. He really has not gotten much of a break at all this season. I felt like he was the one who suffered the most from the lack of rest. But yeah, I feel like, and coupled with the pitch, which was a disaster waiting to happen, like I'm not going to be, like you said, upset about this performance because it's one that we really just had to survive more so than, thrive in. Although we did see, obviously, when we brought on the subs and extra time, like the quality won out, as it was always going to.
There's no question about it. Hey, before we get into breaking down some of the individual performances in this match, I want to remind folks to head over to digitalspurs.com for your new Tottenham merch. This is artwork that has been put to merch like hats, hoodies, t-shirts, and so much more. We love digitalspurs.com. Danny Garrison puts these pieces together, which we love so much. You always see us rocking it here at the Tottenham Depot on our YouTube page, youtube.com/Tottenham Depot. So be sure to head over to digitalspurs.com for your latest Spurs artwork put to merch today. I do want to talk about a couple of the different performances that I thought were notable. Todd, you brought it up earlier. Tony Kinski stepping back in goal, which earlier at midweek, we had talked about, hey, maybe Brandon Austin deserves another start based on what he did in the match prior to Kinski coming in. But I also understand, later in the week, Ange made some comments about, no, Kinski hasn't played a lot. When he was with Slavia Prague, they had kind of shut things down in mid-December, and he needs to get back into the flow of things. So I appreciated the fact that they wanted to bring him in. I thought the only thing that was really notable is that, like we're talking about with a kind of a dodgy situation, a dodgy pitch, a smaller venue, the crowd obviously being up for it and into it. I thought Kinski just did a really great job of commanding the box and taking control of things when need be, and left no stone unturned, I guess you could say, Todd.
Yeah, he really didn't put a foot wrong as far as I was concerned. And this is essentially what you're looking for from a keeper is nothing. Right? Just do the things we want you to do. Let's not talk too much about you, and we'll see you next match. Great job. And that's what we got out of Tony Kinski. And honest to goodness, Andrew, if this is what we can get, if this is what we can expect from Tony Kinski week in and week out, Again, I'm going to double down on what I said before. I don't know that Vicario sees the pitch for us in a meaningful game anytime soon.
And we did see pictures Vicario like back training this week, and like maybe even
His
seems
villain
a little bit.
arc is pretty wild right
Yeah,
now.
it even seems a little bit early for him to be back to training on the pitch, but who knows? Like maybe things are just going well there, and that would be swimmingly. Things are going swimmingly. That would be great if he can get back to full health. Caroline, I wanted to bring up Mikey Moore with you because like this is a guy that we would like to see more of. Obviously, he got hit with that illness, and it was nice for him to be back out there. What did you think of his performance? Was subbed off about 68 minutes in that first batch of subs, but he at least got some time on the pitch today, which was good to see.
Yeah, I think he did look a little bit rusty in the first half just because he's been out for so long, but he really grew into the game. And, I know a lot of fans are frustrated that he was subbed off when he was, because he really was starting to, be that sort of creative spark that we needed. But I do think Ange has to be cautious with him, on his return. And he's kind of done the same with a lot of the other young players like Lucas, being pretty cautious about how many minutes they're getting, back to back. So I think that was smart from him. And, it would be great if we could see him featuring more often because we were so excited about him in the beginning of the season. And, the timing of his injury was just very unfortunate, or not injury, but illness. But yeah, I think he's going to be able to play an important role coming up.
Yeah, no question about it. The other man that, two men really. I mean, we could talk a little Brennan Johnson as well, but Timo Werner was kind of playing through the middle in this one, Todd. And it just, I've officially reached the point of the season where I'm done and tired of talking about Timo Werner and his lack of input and his lack of production and his lack of anything really. Where are you at with Timo Werner? I know that's a really broad question that takes a moment of thought, but like it's hard.
I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Well, and I'll add too, this is the great thing about Mikey being back is that now he can be that first sub for Sonny, and not Timo.
But will he be is the question.
God, I hope so.
And again, I think in an ideal world, we're still getting to a place where Sonny is the first sub. Like that would be the greatest spot. With Timo, obviously some word came out this week that like Spurs are not really interested in. First of all, Timo is not interested in going anywhere. I don't think anyone's interested in shipping him away just because the bodies are needed at this point. But until someone else comes in, no one else is really going to be going out because this team is still so injury ravaged and needs the depth. But my goodness, like I'm not saying that Timo Werner should have just gone and scored a hat trick because that just doesn't. You can't just snap a finger and that happen in a match like this, but I would have liked to have seen something else. I mean, he did have the one clear breakaway chance, which he just isn't able to lift the ball. There were a couple. Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's gotten to the point where you just kind of have to throw your hands up and know that it is not going to go well. I don't know what other answers there are though for Timo Werner's playing time and just what he looks like at this point of his career. It's clearly more, I think it's clearly more mental than physical at this point too, because it's not like he's put too many minutes on his legs. It's not like he doesn't appear to be carrying anything from an injury standpoint. It just seems like it's between the ears at this point, and that is a really, really hard thing to fix.
Well, I also just think he's much better on the wing than at striker. Like throughout his career, that's always been the case. And he doesn't have the skill set to be a striker in an Ange team, frankly. So it kind of brought down the level of the entire forward line, in my opinion. I feel like Brennan was having his own issues, let's be clear. But the situation with Timo was not really helping.
Well, how much of Brennan's issues are coming from the fact that the center forward play was dog shit? And I think that like Timo Werner, he has played striker before when he was a younger man, and I don't know if he's lost it's not a step. I don't. It's just he at it when he played striker for RB Leipzig the first time he was there, he was really clinical. Won a golden boot in the Bundesliga from that spot. And I don't know if it was just their system or if it's the speed or physicality, the Premier League, but whatever it is, when that guy is going up against two center backs, he absolutely gets bodied. And in an Ange system, you need quality hold up play from your center forward. And without it, your wingers look ineffective. And that's what I thought we saw from the beginning of this match was ineffective winger play because our hold up play was inconsistent.
Yeah, the funny thing is in this match in particular, not that I really don't think we need to do like a full tactical breakdown, and like it's just one of those matches where the obvious talent gap is there. It's just a matter of getting the job done, which Spurs obviously were not able to do in the 90, but did it in spades in when they kind of brought on the reinforcements of Sonny and Solanke and Bergvall came on and I thought looked extremely good. But I thought that the midfield in general, it led by oddly enough, Yves Bissouma was really strong in this match, and they should have been. They're playing, they're playing Tamworth. Like this is a match that the likes of Madison, Sarr, and Bissouma should have looked really good, and they did. I think that the lack of that finishing touch came from the front three, frankly, and that's kind of just where it was. And then once the reinforcements came on, you wear a team out long enough, a team that is not, they're semi-pro. I mean, let's not sugarcoat it. And I do want to say, like, credit to Tamworth. Like, this they should absolutely be holding their heads high after this, despite the score line, because they held Spurs scoreless for 90 minutes on their home ground. That's a cool thing for them. It's one of those things that, like, it's a tip of the cap, but it's also, this is where we are. This is the nature of this competition, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that Zara sales associate that they had on the wing was pretty quick, and he had some nifty feet. So shout to that guy. But I mean, this is just kind of this is the nature of the cup, right? If we're playing Tamworth at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, that's a 5-0 defeat, right? That's a 6-0. That's something easy. But we're in their backyard. We're changing in the the hallway of a 7-Eleven bathroom, and we're going out there on the plastic pitch. Like, we play better on better pitches than that when we play five-a-side out here, and like it's not like it's not good. Man, it's not good. But it's one of the best things and one of the worst things about this competition, right? So it's like the worst thing when you go out and you have a mare, right? It's the best thing when you get to see a cup set, or somebody gets all excited, or like when we went to Marine. I saw a post from the Marine Football Club yesterday that said, shout to Tottenham Hotspur. This is our biggest thing ever. 32,000 people, including myself, went to that game virtually, and it literally sustained their football club for the next 20 years. And so it's like that is something you have to show love and respect for the competition as a whole, but also in matches like this, it's just get out of there with nobody hurt in a victory. And that's what we did.
There's no question about it. And the draw has already taken place. Spurs will travel to face Aston Villa in the 4th round of the FA Cup. Caroline, how are we feeling about this draw? Obviously, 32 teams left. You get through to this one, you get to the final 16, but not an easy trip to Villa.
No, but I don't think they were the most difficult opponent we could have received either. Like, I breathed a huge sigh of relief when Liverpool went off the board. And, I was also glad we didn't get Manchester City, because it would feel like tempting fate to have to knock them out of a second cup competition. So really, I feel like this is, it would have been nice for it to be a home match, but otherwise, I think it'll be okay. Like, we tend to play well against Aston Villa, so I think it'll be all right.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to speak with some of the fine Villa folks on Blue Sky earlier this morning, and would agree that this particular cup draw was quite enticing. Villa fans are an interesting bunch. I think nothing but positive things about them and their rich and storied history of not being relevant for 30 years. But
You're not being held hostage right now, are you? Because you kind of sound like it.
It's important to me to give a fair perspective on this, which is Villa and Spurs are much more alike than they are dissimilar in terms of our history and our kind of the way that the two clubs are kind of woven into the frame of the fabric of the neighborhoods where they sit. And like, there's a lot of great things to appreciate about Aston Villa, just as there are a lot of great things to appreciate about Spurs. My favorite part is that the last time that we played them, we kicked the shit out of them, and I hope that we do it again. So I'm excited.
It is true. It is true. Yeah, I'm certainly glad that it wasn't, the likes of Liverpool or City, and of course it couldn't be Arsenal because they couldn't even get past the 10-man United at home. Shame for them. They're done. However, as we look ahead for Spurs, Arsenal are next on the fixture list. It is a Wednesday game against Arsenal. That ain't gonna be fun, is it? A couple days from now, another North London derby. How are we feeling confidence-wise going into this one after the cup week that we've just had?
I do think this gives us some momentum, even though obviously the performance today was not what we would have liked to see. I still think it's a results thing that's going to give us that energy going into the North London derby. And I think Arsenal do not have momentum on their side, for sure. It feels like we're starting to see like cracks and their approach to the game being very negative. It feels like their fans are getting a little restless too. So it'll probably be an interesting environment. I'll say that. And I'm never going to feel confident about the away fixture, but I do feel like the players right now for Spurs are just giving everything, and they understand what it means. So I'm feeling cautiously optimistic, I guess.
Never cautiously optimistic. I appreciate your perspective. I personally am never cautiously optimistic when we go to the Emirates, because I've seen some of the best Tottenham teams in 25 years go to the Emirates and get their dicks knocked in the dirt after about 20 minutes. So I look at this situation and go, there's never, ever a good or easy time to play Arsenal at their place when you're Spurs. But if you had to do it, them coming off the backs of two demoralizing defeats in two separate cup competitions is the best possible time to get it. And, I never root for injury, but I did see that Richarlison's backup in the national team did have a knee injury today. And so that guy won't be available either. The other thing is, I don't think that they've got a couple of key players that are not available for this fixture after the two games this week. So honestly, man, it couldn't be a better time for us to play us. I still think the best result we have in us is a draw.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I love that Todd described Gabriel Jesus that way as Richarlison's backup.
Well, he's not wrong about it.
But also, I think Jorginho is a doubt too. So that'll be helpful because I hate that guy.
And of course, Spurs are still going to have a number of missing pieces as well. Of course, we did get a little bit of pushback, not pushback, but a little bit of response from Ange Postecoglou regarding Rodrigo Bentancur's status. There was a lot of speculation following his departure from the cup game against Liverpool at midweek about what his injury was. It's a concussion, which is obviously not good. I don't want to make light of that. But a lot of people were speculating about things that it could have been worse than that. And he kind of had some pushback about that. So he's in the concussion protocol. He'll be a miss. Spurs are obviously still waiting for the likes of, virtually their entire back line to return, the likes of Romero, Van de Ven. None of these guys are expected back this soon, but you never know. I mean, look, Spurs are they're advertising on LinkedIn for job availability within the medical team this week. I mean, who knows?
Can we talk on it? Can we talk on it for just a second?
We can briefly touch on it. Yes, I don't know. I actually don't know how real that actually was, or if that was like a bit someone was doing, because it seemed very silly to me.
It did not seem silly for me, especially because I heard Ali Gold talk about it on his podcast.
Okay, so okay, then fair enough. I missed that, so that gives it validity. Then I recant.
And what have I been screaming about for the entire time that we've had this podcast? That our physio department has their heads up their asses, heads up their asses. And we got rid of the main problem, the guy that had been there for 25 fucking years, to be at the end of the season last year. And so I'm over here going, we're going to do so much better, Andrew. We're going to do so much better on the injury front this year. It's going to be awesome. And what happens? Fucking MASH unit yet again. And so Ange goes in there and goes, what the shit is this? What are we doing? You got the best fucking facilities in the entire country, and you've got jackholes running your physio department. Ridiculous. He went in there, and I'm not saying that he did it, but I'm saying that collectively between Levy and Donna and fucking Munn and Langa, they all went, we're spending all this money to build this team, and we've got absolutely monkeys fucking footballs in our physio department. Done.
Does the NHS cover heads up asses? Is that a thing that they'll take care
Or
of?
monkeys fucking footballs? I'm not sure. Regardless,
I don't even know what that is supposed to mean.
I don't either. I was just kind of letting him go, but
it is an alliteration of fuelty. I think is the best way to put it.
fair enough. Yeah, look, I don't know how much there is to blame. Look, obviously the Spurs physio situation has been a problem for years. I don't know how much it's been exacerbated by the style of play that Ange has brought into this club. We've talked a lot about that from a defensive standpoint. These guys all coming up with hamstrings, especially the likes of Van de Ven. Like we've talked Udogie, the same kind of deal. We've talked a lot about that. I think there's a combination of things at play here. First and foremost, it's the fixtures. Like there are too many games. Obviously, we've talked about that as well. But I'm fine. Like all the changes seem positive. I'm down for them. Like getting better in all departments as a club. It's just it's not going to help you in the immediacy. So they need bodies back. And I keep hearing all these people excited about the next handful of months with players coming back, and I want to keep reminding people that like we don't know how players. I mean, we already saw Romero and Van de Ven come back briefly and then have to go right back out again because they rushed back. That's what I'm very nervous about and want to be, talk about cautiously optimistic. That's where I am when it comes to all of the myriad injuries that this club has been dealing with. I'm cautiously optimistic, and I want them to be able to come back healthy 100%. And contribute and not have these fits and starts and get on the pitch and then have to come right back off again. That's no way to run a football club. Before we kind of move on to talking about some other things, the other thing we did not talk about earlier this week is Spurs' decision to extend Heung-min Son's contract by a year. This was not a surprise. It was actually reported months ago and then just kind of was made official this past week. Obviously, I'm not going to have anything really negative to say about this, although we have talked at length about Sonny's contribution this season and him starting to look like he's slowing down a little bit. And again, this goes to the same conversation we have about just too many fixtures, especially for someone at his age. Caroline, what's your reaction to this just from a general sense? I mean, obviously it's great that the captain's going to be around and we want to be able to have him lift a trophy, and this gives him more opportunity to do that. But what's it going to look like for Sonny over this next year and a half now that he's guaranteed to be at the club?
Well, I fully believe that if we had a legitimate rotation option for him all this time besides Timo, he would have been getting a lot more rest and would be playing a lot better. I genuinely think that that's the biggest factor in his performances this season is just, the nonstop nature. Like we've seen it in seasons where he's had heavy involvement with his national team. It's the same situation. So I think, once we do start to get players back, he's going to benefit from that. But I am all for this contract extension. And frankly, I feel like if he does not retire at the club, it will be a travesty. I've always said that. And it is still my stance. So
I think that's really fair, Kaz. I agree wholeheartedly with what you said about the lack of, Odebear, basically, is what it boils down to, is the Odebear injury really put Sonny on an island for us in that position. The other thing is, and let's just be candid about it, is that the Ange system doesn't favor Sonny, right? It kind of turns him into more of a touchline winger than it does anything else, requiring him to kind of drop back much further than he'd like to get involved in more of the build-up play, and then find himself back out on an island anyway. They're trying to do different things on that, but it's requiring his off-the-ball running to be different yet as good as it was in the past. And that transition period, it has been difficult for him because he's fucking gassed, as you mentioned. So I agree with the contract extension. I think, and the biggest reason why is not his production, oddly enough. It's his leadership.
It's his
It's his,
presence.
it's his leadership, Andrew. It is something that and I love Hugo, don't get me wrong. I love Hugo. But something that we distinctly missed from those Hugo Lloris, Harry Kane teams was a genuine sense of leadership. And every single player, every single coach, every single physio on that Spurs team says, this is Sonny's team. And you just saw, if you got to see the picture of him embracing Tony Kinski after that match against Liverpool at the midweek, and Tony Kinski, and all you could see is Tony Kinski's face. And it was like he was hugging his grandfather. Man, it was incredible. And so,
Hey, come on, Sonny's not that old.
I'm not saying he's that old. I'm just saying the love on that boy's face was like, this is someone who's embraced me. And he's literally known the guy for 3 days.
But,
so I'm over here.
I would add, too, that I can't think of a better person to be captain at this time when we're transitioning the team to be younger and bringing in so many inexperienced players that need that leadership. Like, I think he's going to be very important to that process.
And when he officially hands that armband to Decky, it's going to be a glorious, glorious day.
And he can walk around in the locker room and keep asking everybody, "You all right, mate?" You know, he can just continue to do that. God, I cannot believe I just did that. Look, awesome. I get what you're saying about like Sonny and Ange's system too, Todd. But like, God, could you imagine 4 years ago? Because he still did have that dribbly winger type of pace. Like, man, like I sometimes I think about like, man, what if he just didn't have the miles on him at this point? Like, we wouldn't be looking for someone to go out there and do what we know he used to be capable of doing. There is a little bit of that brings just a tinge of sadness to me, but I fully agree with what you guys are saying. Like, he's needed in this moment. You need a guy like this around to bridge that gap.
Well, what I want to say about Sonny's overall play is that we're seeing a transition in Sonny this year from a guy that was responsible for the production for this team to a guy that is more responsible for other things in this squad. And I think that what you're really looking at is a transition of the way that Sonny does what Sonny does. Now, don't get me wrong. He can still, break the lines and get through. And he's still, still very, not as much as he was, but still very clinical in front of the goal. And I think when he gets more rest and is fully healthy, he will be more so. But I think what you're actually seeing right now, Andrew, is Sonny trying to recreate his game to still be effective without the skill sets that kind of led to his easy chances before. So it's like he doesn't have the Timo Werner burst of pace to put somebody in his pocket and get to the byline and cross it back in. He doesn't have, it's not there. He does have the ability to put that ball across the defender's face and shape up and curl one in. And he does have the ability to, take that inside route when you've got a legitimate overlap from an Udogie or a Jed Spence, and be one of the middle options. And I think that this is a transition for everybody because, again, it's not how Sonny has played for us in the past. But I think that paying him to be not only who he was, who he is, and who he's going to be is what their approach was on that. And I think that if the production dips significantly and he doesn't have the ability to properly and effectively recreate himself or reinvent himself, then after this year, he'll ride off into the sunset. To be candid with you, if that guy went to Japan, if that guy went back to the K-League, if that guy came to the MLS, bonkers popularity-wise.
No, so you're 100% right about that. And Caroline points out in our chat here, Sonny's still second in the team for Premier League goal contributions, one behind James Maddison, which is facts. Like he's there. He's still doing a thing. So good shout there and credit to him. And glad that he's going to be around for another year. I have no qualms about it whatsoever. Guys, let's talk a little bit about Spurs Women before we get out of here today, because they were supposed to play in the FA Cup as well, but a frozen pitch at Everton did not allow that to happen. So that match still yet to be rescheduled to this point. So Spurs Women will have to wait until next Sunday. They return to action against Leicester at home in WSL play. But Caroline, we kind of alluded to it earlier in the week. There's some changes being made within the coaching staff and the recruitment structure for Spurs Women. For me, everything I've read about it sounds positive. What's your kind of outlook on these changes being made within the structure?
Yeah, I think so. The coach who's coming in is Brie Campos, who she's American but played for the Mexico national team in her playing career, and she was
just like Landon Donovan, I guess, right?
Yeah. Oh man.
Sorry. I always have to get my Landon Donovan pot shots in when I can.
And Todd's here to hear you say that. But yeah, so she was an international player herself. She was an assistant with Robert previously in the Swedish league, obviously. So someone he's familiar with working with, and I think that's going to be a good addition. I was a little sad to hear that Anton Blackwood was leaving the club, because he's been a long time servant with the women's team. He's had different roles, but most recently he was working with the academy players, helping them transition into the first team. And you only have to look at how Lena Gunning-Williams and Araya Dennis were doing to see that he was quite successful in that role. So good luck to him where he goes next. And we also got news too that they're going to be hiring a technical director,
right?
Because
just one in general.
The women's team has never had someone in that sort of designated role. So I think that can only be a positive, because we know the situation right now is that Robert is still heavily involved in recruitment, which takes away from his time with the team, obviously. So I think it's kind of sad that it took this long for them to prioritize making such a hire. But I'm glad that it's happening. And I'm really hoping that means we're going to be able to kind of diversify our recruitment for the playing squad. Because, currently it's been very heavily reliant on the Australia national team and players from Sweden who have played in the Swedish league. So yeah, I think we just need to see, some new experience and technical expertise brought to the club on the women's side. So I'm really curious to see who is going to be that hire when they announce it.
Yeah, if ever there's been evidence that Robert has been very involved in the recruitment, just look at where all the players are coming from. They're coming from where he came from. So that's where it makes a lot of sense. Speaking of the recruitment, I guess we haven't really heard much else. Not that we normally hear rumors about Spurs transfers on the men's or women's side these days, because everything seems so hush hush. But obviously Olivia Holt came in last week. We think there will be more coming this January, but where are the places of need within this squad that they need to kind of bolster for the second half of the season?
Well, the one legitimate rumor we have heard is that Jennifer Falk, the goalkeeper who's currently playing in the Swedish league, that she's going to be coming in. Like, they've been saying this for months and months. So if it doesn't happen, I'll be extremely surprised. We need a third keeper with Caitlin Talbot going back to West Ham at the end of her loan. So I think bringing in someone who's, experienced, but maybe a little less injury prone at this stage of her career than Becky Spencer, unfortunately, has become, someone who can help Eleanor Heaps with her development as well. I think that'll be a positive. Other than that, I'm glad that we brought in sort of that creative attacking midfielder, because that was really the biggest need, in my opinion, with Grace Clinton not being with the club anymore. It feels like we're pretty good in terms of like defensive depth at the moment. We could maybe bring in another center back if there's someone on the market. I'm not even going to say who my dream signing would be, because Todd probably already knows. But it's not going to happen, so I'm not going to say it.
You don't even want to put it out there into the ether?
I'll just be too sad when she goes to Chelsea, or I think Leon
fair enough.
is actually the real rumor. But
yeah,
Yeah. But otherwise, it feels like the squad is actually in a pretty decent place in terms of depth. Obviously there's always room for another midfielder since Kit Graham is still going to be out for the whole season. But I think really just making sure that goalkeeper signing happens, that's got to be the priority for me.
And obviously the fixture congestion is less than on the men's side just because there are fewer games, but with a postponement today, that fixture is obviously going to be stuck somewhere in this schedule. So you want the depth to be able to get through the rest of the season and have a good end campaign, not only for the cups, but have a good campaign ending in the WSL season as well. That would be really positive.
I will note too that we just heard Araya Dennis is going out on loan at Southampton, which I think is going to be a good move for her. Really great experience because she looked really bright in the 2 appearances she's already had with the senior team, and I feel like if she gets some consistent game time, she could be ready to be an actual contributor next season, despite how young she is. So I'm excited for her to have that experience. So I guess there is potential to bring in another forward, and also Rosella Ayan is back with the club after the end of her NWSL loan. I mean, I'll be kind of surprised if she's still here at the end of January, but we'll see.
That was a weird one, completely weird. And
yeah, she played one game.
Yeah, that's kind of where we are. It's just finding a home for everyone as this roster continues to churn and Robert continues to put his stamp on it. It's a slow go, but hopefully the hires and the recruitment structure and all of that will speed things up and really get Spurs Women kicked on into that more upper tier of the WSL where we all think that they can and should be. Guys, anything else we need to kind of get off the chest before we get out of here this week? It feels like a 2-pod week, and it feels like there was less to talk about today.
Indeed. I just had to posit one question to the crew before we get out of here.
I can't wait for this based on the last few we've gotten at the end of a podcast. Please.
It's primarily directed at Caroline, but I'm curious as to your perspective as well. Who's worse, Kai Havertz or Timo Werner?
Timo. I don't even have to think about it.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm a Kai apologist.
Remove your Kai Havertz bias.
But you know
what? That'd be like removing my entire face, which I'm not at liberty to do.
I can admit that he has his downsides, namely his tendency to flop, which I will acknowledge. But I do think that he has much more to give to a team than Timo, unfortunately. There's a reason he's still getting called up to the national team. Let's put it that way.
Andrew?
Yes, ditto, seconded. Come on. What are we doing here?
Both are shit. And I was just curious which is more shit. I think it's a fair question. Go ahead.
I think that's where we are. I think that's kind of where we are and where we'll leave it. Just want to, before we get out of here, just want to send well wishes to everybody in the LA area. Obviously, just everything that's gone on there over the last week is devastating and heart-wrenching, and our thoughts and good wishes go out to everyone out there, and any listeners out there. It's put me in a really weird mood all week, and we're all thinking about all of you. Also, just want to let folks know next week we probably will not have a pod on Sunday. We're probably going to push it to Monday just because of scheduling stuff on our end. So there will be a lot to talk about. Obviously, we've got a North London derby at midweek on the men's side, and another game, I believe it's Everton, away to Everton on the men's side. And then the women play Leicester next Sunday as well as they return to action. So there will be plenty to discuss. And obviously it's January, so there will still be plenty to discuss there as well, but we'll come back with a big pod here in another week and get you all through the rest of this month talking Spurs and following everything that goes on with this club, because my goodness, there's certainly a lot happening right now. That's going to do it for this edition of the Tottenham Depot. Be sure to check out our episodes on our YouTube page, youtube.com/Tottenham Depot. Leave us a rating review on your podcast app of choice as well to help spread the word about the show. You can follow Caroline at CG Stefko. You can follow Todd at TC_Kasho. You can follow me at A Stetka, and follow us at Tottenham Depot. Until next week, this has been the Tottenham Depot podcast. As always, come on, you Spurs.